Good evening and welcome to episode 15 of the Jacksonian. As I have with me is the host of the number one Oklahoma State podcast, Locked On Oklahoma State, the one and only Cody Stovall, where we will be discussing the history of the Bedlam, the 2023 edition of the Bedlam, are the rankings being disrespectful to Oklahoma State, amongst the topics. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. It's Friday. It's a calm before the storm. You can feel the energy and everything kind of ramping up on campus right now. And that's really all you want, right? Any fan of college football, especially in home games, you want to try to take this emotion, take this feeling, bottle it up, feed it to the players, and hope that it translates to the field.
Oh, it will. I am looking forward to this game, that is for sure. Actually, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
So I've been a lifelong Cowboy. My dad got season tickets starting in 1997. I'm one of those weird individuals that I will sit in my car for hours and listen to wrestling matches, cross-country meets. I really don't care. If it's Oklahoma State related, other than tennis, I know I need to get better. But tennis is about the only sport I don't know a decent amount about, so I stay away from that, man. I've always just been a diehard Cowboy, and I always wondered, as a Cowboy fan, growing up, why I had to sift through 7 pages of OU bullcrap to get to one article of Oklahoma State. So even our in-state media has always been a brick wall when it came to Oklahoma State information. So I always wished that I could, know a little bit more and have a hand in it. And if I ever did have the opportunity to make some things make sense to the fan base, that's what I was going to do. So I've been very blessed in this job thus far, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I live by this motto that I'd rather be a group of people's shot of whiskey than everybody in the world's cup of tea. So I'm all right with it.
Yeah, I learned something in my youth over like a few years back, whereas when you're in your 20s, you worry about what everybody thinks of you. When you're in your 40s, you really don't care what everybody thinks of you. And then when you're in your 60s, 70s, you realize it never mattered to begin with.
It's the same concept as, for some odd reason, we come into the world in diapers and we leave the world in diapers too. So yeah, I get you.
That's true. So first thing I wanted to go over is the 2023 edition of the Bedlam on ABC 2:30 p.m. What is your take on it this year?
Well, I have honestly never seen this level of rejuvenation, regalvanization, whatever you want to call it, right? Anybody who's been following the game of football for a long time knows that traditionally, once you start to lose from the locker room, you got about like a 2 to 10% chance of getting it back. Well, we're in one of those 2 to 10% opportunities here at Oklahoma State because we not only reeled off several wins in a row, but we have the number one running back in the country, statistically speaking. And if you've had the opportunity to watch Ollie Gordon, you'll see why. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch Ollie Gordon, I implore you to do such. He's a different dude, man. He runs a lot like Bijan Robinson, almost the same size, speed, stiff arm combo. One thing that I would say that a lot of people don't necessarily take into consideration is his jump cut is not only phenomenal, but it's his secondary move off of the jump cut that makes him very rare, right? Usually you make a jump cut and the running back has to kind of reestablish their feet and their hips before they can take off. Ollie somehow does not have to do that. He can jump cut and then instantaneously accelerate off of 1 foot, plant foot, doesn't matter. That's what makes him a rare bird. So I tell people all the time, whether you know a lot about Bedlam or not, or you care about Bedlam or not, if you like watching good football players and dudes that are good enough to compete for a Heisman, that makes watching Oklahoma State this weekend worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, to your point about Ollie Gordon, he's leading the league in rushing yards with 1,087 rushing yards.
He's leading America.
Season. That's big right there. I mean, is this guy a Heisman candidate? Because if that were me as a voter, I'd be having him as a candidate.
Well, 100%, right? The problem that he's going to run into is because we had a quarterback competition, and realistically speaking, we had a competition at a number of positions. The first 3.5 games of the season, he only got 19 carries at all. right? And everyone wants to talk about the loss to South Alabama, as we should, because it was a horrendous loss. But he only got the ball like 2 or 3 times that entire game. So really, right? Check this out. He put up 262 yards, 282 yards, and 271 yards in the last 3 games. And out of the last 4 games, you're playing multiple ranked teams, and he's putting up a $150 to almost 300 every game. So not only is he leading the country and he's leading the league, he's also averaging 7.7 yards a carry, and he's doing all of it on 5 games.
Well, I am looking at the stats as of right now. He's only second to Kamini Vidal from Troy, but that's because Troy played last night.
Okay.
But I do believe Ollie Gord's going to get that lead back. I mean, I feel like I'll be watching Sully and Randall competing for the number 1 scare title, Monsters, Inc.
There you go.
Where Ollie Gord's just going to be like, slumber party. And then the secretary's going to go, never mind. Woo!
And again, man, why it's going to be worth the watch is OU has made no qualms about their game plan, right? And their perception of things, if you stop Ollie Gordon, you win. So they're going to load 7, 8, maybe even creep a 9th into the box, which, it's going to open some things up for the wide receivers. And it should be worth the weight in gold just to watch the daggone game, just to see what Ollie can do against an 8-man box loaded with NFL players. I'm excited for it.
Same here. That I'm making sure I'm watching it at 2:30. That is appointment television for me right there. I mean, Missouri Georgia's a good game. Don't get me wrong; it's a great game, but it's not greater than the last edition of the Bedlam. And I got a question for you. Do you think that Big Noon Kickoff and College Game Day have put a massive disrespect on the Bedlam?
100%. Right. This is 100% a little bit of a shove in the face, a stiff arm, a Heisman pose, if you will, on this Bedlam matchup. Right. I do think that maybe if OU beats KU, then we have a little bit more of an argument. But let's face it, man. Even if OU wins, and this is a top 5 versus top 25, top 20 style of game, I still don't know that game day would have come. I think that's the most disrespectful part. Is I almost feel like game day, Big Noon Kickoff, they're almost looking for a reason for it not to be Bedlam, which is kind of preposterous. It being the last one potentially ever, and then OU losing was there. Ha ha ha! See, right? We gotta find other games for these marquee times. This is what it is. And I tell you this: even OU fans will tell you they wanted no part of a night game. They wanted no part of a night game in Stillwater, so they're elated that it's midday. We're a little salty about it still, but all you can do is go out there and play the game and see if you can get the W.
Well, I mean, even though I'm a Bama fan, people would probably think, oh, you're happy about Alabama LSU going to game day. Well, guess what? I'm not, because I'm a little sick and tired of everybody always talking about Bama LSU, Bama LSU, when we know Bama will get revenge against LSU. And, I mean, you could put Bama LSU on game day any other year. But, I mean, we're talking about what is the last edition of the Bedlam.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
The series is super slanted, right? Which I'm sure we're going to jump into. But you know the drill, man. It being the last one, it's the last one that matters. Right. It's because this is the one for bragging rights. This is the one that all the local high school recruits and kids are going to be paying attention to. So if we win this game, OU can go to the SEC and they can talk about the Bedlam record till they're maroon in the face, or crimson as they like to call it. But if we win this one on the way out the door, not only does it help us tremendously in recruiting, but we get to say, hey, you have 90 of them. That's good. That's a cool story. But what happened the last time? Which is another reason why this one's even bigger than all of the others. And let's face it, with the first place tie, this weekend will distinguish basically the pretenders from the contenders.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why it should be on Big Noon Kickoff or in game day is because Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are both in that 5-way first place tie. I mean,
yeah. The Big 12 may not be as good as last year, but top to bottom, the craziness, the weekly parity, it's the same, man.
yeah. I mean, I know Kansas State, Texas is a big game, but that should be the 2:30 ABC game.
Thank you. But it's Texas. It is what it is.
Yeah. True.
Even though we've beat them 9 of the last 12 games, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. Texas sucks. I don't know if y'all knew that in SEC country, but they do.
Well, I will say that I just hope that Sean McDonough is calling the Oklahoma State game. Then maybe I won't be so upset.
Right. Dude, I tell you, the worst, and tell me if I'm wrong, but the worst color commentating guy I've seen in the last 2 years is RG3, man. He says some ridiculously off the wall, sometimes inappropriate, has nothing to do with the game of football comments. I know several people that have to mute the TV when RG3 is on a call. He just tries to be too cute. I don't get it.
I don't know, man. It's just I guess everybody likes him at the moment. I guess ESPN thinks, let's put this guy on.
I guess. I mean, they did have to fire a bunch of really decent people, so I don't know.
I mean, firing David Pollock, that's just dumb. Good grief.
Yeah. Wait, there's no telling, man. There's no telling what ESPN has going or not, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they got the SEC Big 12, but they lost to Big 10, and they're going to lose the West Coast brands next year. That's going to hurt them financially. Yeah. It's just going to get worse for them.
I think you're probably right, buddy. I really do.
That's for sure. So I looked at the AP rankings and the coaches poll. Oklahoma State is not ranked in either one of them. But I look at the college football playoff rankings. Kansas is above Oklahoma State in the initial college football playoff rankings. And I'm looking at the Mark Rogers rankings. You guys are 21st. Now, if I didn't know better, I would say Mark Rogers and the CFP rankings are giving y'all a little more respect. And AP and the coaches poll are giving you guys zero respect because of that loss to South Alabama. And I mean, I get it. You got spanked with a belt by South Alabama. I get that. You lost a tight one to Iowa State.
We got took behind the woodshed and taught a thing or three.
Oh yeah, but I'm looking at what y'all have done since then. Y'all did magnificent on Friday night against Kansas State when there's not a whole lot of people watching on Friday night. Y'all did fantastic against Kansas, and you beat West Virginia, which I mean that's going to be a good win, no doubt about that. And Cincinnati is a pretty good win. So I mean,
if you listen, not if you listen to OU fans out there, right? We got some OU people that are acting like, the only reason Ollie Gordon is putting up these video game numbers is because we haven't played a defense. But mind you, this is the same defense that was number 2 in the conference at allowing just 100.3 yards a game. This is the same defense that was able to stifle OU for 3.5 quarters. We made that defense look very, very, very pedestrian. We ran for 315 yards on a team that barely lets up 100 a game. And another fun thing I like to add that a lot of OU people like to overlook when they talk about Ollie Gordon's put up all these numbers against nobody defenses. The last time Kansas State has even allowed a touchdown at all was to Ollie Gordon. That's 10 quarters that K-State hasn't even allowed anyone to come close to the goal line. But you want to keep talking about, not you, but OU fans and some people nationally want to keep talking about how, well, Ollie's just doing all this against nobody competition. So this is even more reason I'm so excited for this Bedlam game, because you're right. Kansas did get ranked above us. I don't necessarily hate it. And I don't necessarily find it preposterous either that a team that we beat is ranked above us because of their win over OU when OU was absolutely cruising. So I get it. I get it. I actually don't mind where we're at. I do have to give kudos to Mark Rogers. I didn't see that he'd put us that high. But, I was blessed with the opportunity to be on his show again. I think it was last week as well. So I'm hoping that part of our conversation stirred his pull. Maybe, I don't know. But I don't mind the disrespect necessarily by the AP and the coaches, because luckily they don't really matter anymore.
Motivation.
It doesn't matter.
Right there. I mean, if that were me, I'd be making sure teams motivate, be like, hey, you're being disrespected by the AP poll. And what are you going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to show them a thing or two. We're going to have them sit at the 50-yard line.
As we should, dude. This is, I'm telling you, man, and I'm sure that the Iron Bowl is pretty comparable.
True.
It's on a different level, I'm sure, right, for the most part. But you understand, like, the reverberation around campus, it just feels different, right? It just, when you have a big game that actually does have first place implications, that makes the magnitude a little bit bigger. And OU fans do travel pretty well, so we'll see more of the opposite color in the stands than traditional. But just like 2021, if you let this crowd get into it, I mean, we're the closest stadium in America to the sidelines. You can literally reach over and touch the players 100%. And because of that, if you let us get momentum and it does start to get a little wild, that feeds right into our hands. Like, OU's plan is pretty simple. Put 7-8 in the box, try to stop Ollie Gordon, put up a bunch of points early, and make us become a throwing team. And that is a very good recipe for success. But if either one of those things don't happen and they are in a dogfight, I like our crowd, man. I really do.
Yo, keep that OU offense off the field. You're good to go. All I want to say is look at the game plan of the 2020 AFC divisional playoffs between the Titans and Ravens. What they did was keep Lamar off that field. Just run that clock as much as possible.
Yeah. And you got to have a running game to do it. Thankfully we do.
There you go. I cannot wait to see Ollie Gordon on Saturday. That is for sure.
So he's special. He's special. And you got to think, I was on a show earlier, like, Oklahoma State has a large number of college and NFL Hall of Fame running backs. I mean, right now in the league, you got Jalen Warren, you got Justice Hill, you got Chuba Hubbard. People tend to forget that Tyreek Hill was a running back at Oklahoma State, right? And so, like, we have a very good pedigree. Chris Carson would still be playing if not for that devastating neck injury. We've got a long lineage of phenomenal running backs. And what Ollie Gordon's been able to do, there's only one running back in Oklahoma State history that has put up over 250 yards a game for multiple games in a row. And I'm sure everybody in the world can guess who that one running back is.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So when you're putting up Barry Sanders numbers, is anybody comparing Ollie to Barry? Heck no. Absolutely not. But when you're putting up those kind of numbers, and you've seen all of these NFL running backs come through Stillwater to the NFL. Like, Chuba Hubbard rushed for 2,100 yards, and he still didn't do what Ollie's doing now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if I'm an NFL draft scout, I'm going to Stillwater, and I'm thinking, hey, let's get that guy, Ollie Gordon. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's get him.
He's barely 19. He might not even be 19. I don't even think he's 19 yet.
For sure. But I was going to say, we just touched on Tyreek Hill having, being a running back at one point. One thing he did was have a memorable moment against Oklahoma 2014. Now, everybody talks about the one touchdown lead Oklahoma had, but let's not forget, they had a 2 touchdown lead with 5 minutes left in the game in 2014.
Yes,
yeah, I mean, nobody ever talks about that. So, I mean,
well, you kind of mentioned my favorite Bedlam memory. That's it. Because I had a bunch of friends over, and in a former married life, a large contingent of that side of the family was OU fans. So I had more Crimson in my house than I thought I would ever have. I've never been outnumbered in my own home before, but that was one of those times. But so we're there and we're watching that one. And I'm in the backyard. We just go outside. I think the game's over, right? We're going to lose another one. And then it's not in cool fashion because people tend to forget. We had to yank Mason Rudolph's red shirt for that one game. Right. So you're like, oh, we just ruined a red shirt and da-da-da-da-da. And we go outside, right? They punt. Tyreek has a good return, but they elect to repunt. And I just remember sitting in the backyard. My buddies are like, well, what are they doing? And I said, well, I'm sure they're just going to take a penalty or whatever, right? There's no way they're going to re-kick to him. And then my buddies are like, it kind of looks like we are. And I was like, no, Bob Stoops ain't dumb. He ain't going to kick to the fastest player in football again. And he did. And the minute that punter got the ball, I was like, oh, this is not smart. Why would Stoops do this? This is a terrible idea. And then Tyreek gets the ball, and all of the OU fans were like, no. And I was like, holy crap, yes. Oh, yeah. 3 shots on me, baby. Yeah, that was one of the few moments as an O State fan where you watched an OU coach just go completely brain dead for a minute. And you're like, well, okay. All right, we'll take this. And that call by Gus Johnson, right? The cheetah's loose. This is Bedlam. Iconic.
Oh, yeah. Well, I will say that the little backstory to that, Oklahoma, everybody was expecting Oklahoma to get into playoffs, but then they were disappointing everybody. And something I remember from the Bob Stoops era was that when everybody talked about Oklahoma as a favorite, they fell apart. But when nobody said good things about Oklahoma in the preseason, they always did fantastic.
Yep. And I've been riding Gundy because of some of the locker room stuff and just mismanagement and things of that nature. I've been riding him pretty hard, right? So a large contingent of the Oklahoma State fan base assumes that I hate Gundy. I don't hate Gundy. I just think that if you raise the bar, you have to get over. I think Georgia's a perfect example. Perfect. Mark Richt was a very, very good coach, right? He was Mr. 10 wins. He could win 10 games all day, every year, but he could never win the ones that got him a trophy. And I think that's been Mike Gundy. And Georgia, after enough time of, well, dag nabbit, we're tired of this 11-win season stuff. We want a 12, 13-win season. And then it took Kirby Smart a couple years to kind of get it going. But once he got it going, that's the only envisionment I have of Oklahoma State. I don't know if it's going to be Gundy that gets us to that level or not. If it is him, I wanted to see him dive back into it to see if he still had it. And he did, right? He's had multiple interviews and conversations where he said that I'm working 13, 14 hours a day, which is more than I've ever done. I'm drawing up X's and O's on special teams and commanding a unit, which I haven't done in 8 to 10 years. So everything that I was striving for with Gundy, yes, I do wish he would have had this realization moment last year, but at least it happened. And like you said, people want to go to the South Alabama game. That's fine. They should. But we had different quarterbacks. We had different linemen. We had different defensive guys. We ran an entirely different offense. Like, we're a power-oriented team now. Fullbacks, tight ends. We look like a Georgia or an Alabama level team. We're not airing it out 100 times anymore. But we did the first few weeks, and it killed us. So if anybody wants to look, sorry, I know words are hard for me, to the South Alabama game, all you have to do is realize, like, this is 2 completely different teams. They're running completely different offenses. So, yeah, I do think that people would be short-sighted in considering the South Alabama and this team anywhere near the same.
Yeah, I do notice that Mike Gundy is 3-15 in the Bedlam rivalry. That is not good.
No, yeah, you're being nice, buddy. That is absolutely horrendous.
That's bad.
That's bad, man. And he's probably the only coach in America that has been able to get away with something to that effect, right? Like, I don't care what anybody says. If for whatever reason Nick Saban goes 3-15 against Kirby Smart, it ain't even going to get that far, right? And it's the same the other way around. If Kirby Smart is 1-9 against Bama, he's probably not sticking around either, because then they have another Mark Richt situation.
Oh, they throw him out like Carlton on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air if he's doing that.
Yes, sir. And, I like one of the reasons I've rode Gundy is because, to me, it's not about the fact that it's Bedlam, right? That's what people get caught up in. Well, people don't like Gundy because of his Bedlam record. And I try to let people know it has nothing to do with the Bedlam record. What it has to do with is the fact that we've played OU 7 times for a Big 12 title, or the right to go to the Big 12 title game the very next week. Because Bedlam is 90% of the time last game of the year. It just always really has been for the most part. And so it's not that it's Bedlam. I don't care if it's Baylor, Valdosta State, Vanderbilt. If you lose 7 championship games, I don't care who it's to. It just so happens that it's Bedlam, right? So every time we play Bedlam for a title other than 2011 and 2012 or 2021, we just don't show up. And when I say we, I typically mean Gundy, because if you go back and look at most of these Bedlam losses, it's just mismanagement, right? Punting on your own 30 or their 34-yard line. Kicking field goals when you're down by 12 with 3 minutes left. Like stuff like that just has never made sense. And so, in my opinion, Gundy's always gotten his own way in Bedlam. It's not always a talent gap. It's not always a schematic, situation. It's that Bob Stoops, Lincoln Riley, they'll go for it, right? 4th and 1, we're going for it. There's a minute 30 before halftime. We're trying to score. Gundy takes a knee. These have been the Bedlam problems. It's not that he's a horrendous coach or that he just can't get over the Bedlam hump. It's the fact that every Bedlam, he crawls into the super conservative shell, and the coaches on the other sidelines are like, screw it, we'll go for it. Screw it, let's go for a touchdown. Screw a field goal, right? And if Gundy does that this game with the talent that we do have, it's a W. But that is my biggest fear, man. My biggest fear is that he crawls back into the, no, let's just punt it. No, let's just take a knee. The play it safe stuff. I think that'll kill us again.
Well, like 09, you mentioned that Gundy basically has like a brain fart anytime he's in the Bedlam. 09, they got shut out by the Boomer Sooners. Basically lost their shot at an at-large bid in a BCS bowl that year.
Same with 2013, yes.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the many examples where I talked about where nobody talked about Oklahoma that day. Everybody was like, Oklahoma State's got a better chance. They're going to smack Oklahoma around. Oklahoma winds up winning.
Well, hey, I like baseball. I'm very superstitious. I'll say the one benefit to game day not coming is we're like 0-5 when game day comes. So, yeah, I'm not completely upset. I do feel like we got a little bit robbed, of course. I think a lot of people anticipated big noon kickoff. That's kind of what I expected. So I was very surprised when they announced 2:30, to be 100% realistic with you. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, like I said, I know OU fans, they pretend that this game doesn't matter because of the overall record. But I know several OU fans are like, thank God it's not at night. Like, thank goodness.
So, who's going to be your new rival once Oklahoma leaves? Because, I mean, I can't find a single one, honestly. I mean, people can try to make Oklahoma Texas Tech or Oklahoma State Baylor a thing, but I'm just not seeing it.
Dude, that's a phenomenal question. I have actually never been asked that, so I'm glad you did ask me that. There's obviously some options, right? The most commonality, opponent-wise, would be Texas Tech, right? Where you have a lot in common, and mascots, history, agricultural, all that fun jazz. We have a lot in common with Tech, and usually when we get mixed up with Tech, there's a lot of extracurricular activities in the stands. So Tech is a somewhat natural conclusion. If you want to go historically, Kansas State and Colorado, Kansas State has a lot in common, a whole lot. The problem with K-State is they're just too nice, and we're just too nice. You know what I mean? Like, there's never been fist fights with K-State fans. We like each other. We tailgate with each other. We're just too buddy-buddy. Same with Baylor, same with TCU. So I do think Colorado could be interesting, right? Just because the dynamics of Dion and Gundy, Brett Yormark's big into marketability. Those are the two most marketable coaches likely in the new Big 12, other than maybe Kyle Whittingham. And Kyle Whittingham doesn't necessarily bring a lot of pizzazz to the marketing side of the game. So I do think that, we could get ourselves in a pretty precarious situation with the fans in Colorado. But save the best for last. If all things are created equal and Oklahoma State does what we're supposed to do, because if you go back and look historically the last 15, 20 years, the only team in the conference that has more wins is OU. Right? So by process of elimination, if you win more than K-State, you win more than Baylor, you win more than TCU, yes, they might have more conference titles. But if you're going to continue to win at this rate, Utah should be the new logical rival because they're the team that comes in probably most instantaneously ready to compete for a title. And if they do come in year one and win a title, that's not a great look. So out of the teams that should be able to jump up and bite them and knock them off of that we're the new dude pedestal, it's going to be us, K-State, or TCU. And if you go off of W's, it should be us.
Well, to your point about Brett Yormark being into markability, I think they'll have like Oklahoma State, Colorado on rivalry week, and I think BYU, Utah being on, because I mean, the Big 12's not going to be having Texas, Oklahoma to promote anymore. They're not going to have Oklahoma State. So what happens? What do? We add Utah. We made the Holy War the best rivalry in the Big 12. We can't market TCU Baylor, unfortunately. We can't market Kansas State, Iowa State. So we market BYU Utah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do think you're right. The Holy War doesn't quite make up for the Red River, but I do think that it gets pretty close to making up for losing Bedlam. So yeah, I mean, I'm a fan. And let's face it, before this latest round of realignment, Utah fans were the most mouthy about how we don't want to be in that trash conference. That's a truck stop conference. We don't want to be a part of that. So the sanctimonious, pretentious nature in which Utah fans acted before they got into the Big 12, you better believe most Big 12 fan bases are going to remember that.
Yeah. That's going to be pretty big. So I was looking at the history of the rivalry of the Bedlam.
Yes, sir.
And they played they are one of the 4 rivalries to play before statehood. Oklahoma became a state in 1907. They started the series in 1904.
Well, I'm glad you said that. There's a discrepancy. So OU technically started in 1895.
Right.
We did too, for the most part. But by 1904, OU had a few professional coaches, right? One of them being, Vernon Parrington was a really big name. The differentiation between OU and OSU back then, even as reflective of when the series started, is because we didn't hire football coaches, right? We had like player managers. Back then, the sport of football was viewed as not only barbaric, but in 1907, the United States government was going to ban it and make it an illegal sport because it was too barbaric. And without the president making, some rules that they needed to put in place, there's no telling. But that's the thing, man. Back then, what was the big sport? Wrestling, nationally, right? All across the country, people didn't go to football games, especially college football games. You know what I mean? That wasn't really a thing. So Oklahoma State spent all of its time, all of its money, and all of its resources into wrestling. We didn't really come around to the idea of putting money into football until like 1938. And then we won a national title in 1945, and then we haven't really done much since. The difference was Oklahoma State's like, we're going to build a college our wrestling team is proud of, right? And basketball. We won a few national titles in basketball back in the day. Football was like completely not even fourth place as to what Oklahoma State was going to try to do. We didn't really get heavily involved until the World War II era. Since then, you have seen us progressively get a little bit better. But yeah, dude, there's like 70 wins on the books, that 55 if you ask one fan base, 70 if you ask another fan base, where Oklahoma State didn't really participate much in football, and we didn't really care. Now, foreshadowing, kudos to OU. They built the palace on the prairie, right? They were the destination for football in that surrounding area. Oklahoma State was an afterthought, and we really didn't get real serious until Boone Pickens.
Yeah. I mean, dude's got dude had a lot of money.
Yeah. Yes. Thankfully. Yeah. And it's funny how we got him. He was an A&M guy. That was his, he was A&M all the way. That was his dream. He went to A&M, but there was a confliction with scholarships and something to that effect. So Henry Iba, let him come on down to Stillwater, and thankfully he fell in love. But yeah, if A&M wouldn't have screwed that pooch, they'd have had Boone.
True. So one question I was just thinking about, this has to do with the loss to Iowa State. Will that hurt you guys in the long run in the hunt for the Big 12 title?
If they keep winning, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, they're really the only team other than OU and Texas that can keep us out. Like if we win OU, we pretty much control our own destiny unless they continue to win as well, right? So Kansas, we've got the tiebreaker. K-State, we've got the tiebreaker. Obviously, anybody else kind of in that mix, we would inevitably have the tiebreaker. If we win OU, the path to Arlington gets very, 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 very wide open for us, right? Right now, OU and Texas are still kind of in the driver's seat. But after Bedlam and they play K-State, that picture could completely change and get more solidified after this Saturday. But yeah, if Iowa State keeps winning, there's nothing we can do about it.
True. I mean, especially if they upset Texas and Ames, Iowa.
Which is always playing in Ames, Iowa in cold weather. I don't care who you are, how prepared you are. That is a terrible, terrible situation to be in.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to be going up against Matt Campbell. I mean, all those people that just kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater and said, "Oh, Matt Campbell needs to go." Okay, well, who you gonna find that wants to go to Ames, Iowa? I mean, you're not gonna get Kirby Smart's top assistant to go to Ames, Iowa. If you think that, go ahead, but I'm just gonna tell you right now, it's not gonna be easy. I mean,
no, you're 100% right. And he was left for dead. Look at him now. I mean, same with Gundy. Like, I didn't think Gundy was going to be able to regain the entirety of the locker room after what transpired last season and in the beginning of this year, right? But he did. And Matt Campbell, remember, he was trying to throw hands with fans for telling him he was on the hot seat. You remember seeing some of that at the beginning of the year?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. It's like when you see all that, it's like, well, Matt Campbell really is bothered. He might really be on the super hot seat. So I'm actually happy that they've turned it around the way they have. And as much as every time they win, it makes our loss look better, every time they win, it makes us getting to Arlington harder.
Yeah, I mean, it was just disrespectful what the media was doing to Matt Campbell, but now they've been on like this big winning streak. It's been impressive. And I will say, one of the teams you went up against, Cincinnati, the reason why they've had that big 6-game losing streak is because they've gotten in their own way.
Thank you. Yes, I've been telling people they've been pulling that. Honestly, I know people hate saying it, but the Gundy stuff. Like, why are you punting? You realize you're down by 11 with 2 minutes left? What are you doing? And then, I'm a firm believer in you only get 6 timeouts, right? There is zero reason for you to leave the game with 5 timeouts. It's not you don't get to carry him over to the next game. Use your timeouts. Try to scheme stuff. UCF doesn't do that. Cincinnati doesn't do that. That's why they're in the situation that they are. It's not a massive talent gap. Those are two programs that their coaches have gotten their own way and found ways to screw them out of victories.
I'll be honest, Malzahn, I mean, that was a bad move that Central Florida did in giving him that contract stitch. I mean, it's like, well, we need stability. Yeah. We need stability. The hell was stability? You're in Orlando, Florida. Yeah. You can get anybody to go there. I mean, Cincinnati got a Power 5, a mediocre one, I might add, a mediocre Power 5 coach to leave for Cincy. And Houston was able to get Dana Holgerson to leave West Virginia for Houston while they are in the non-Power 5. So don't tell me that you can't get a good coach, because you can, Central Florida.
Yeah.
You got you're the fourth Florida school that's a Power 5 school.
And, dude, they're just completely opposite. You're 100% right. Like, you're going to give Coach, what is it, Satterfield or Satterwhite? Scott?
Satterfield.
You're going to give him a little bit of a leash, right? Because this is a big step up. Gus Malzahn's been here. He's done that. He's won the Heisman. He's won a national title. If he doesn't know how to use timeouts and how to kick field goals and score touchdowns when the game's closing, now he ain't going to figure it out, man. If he doesn't understand it by now, it's not magically going to happen.
Well, knowing Malzahn, they'll probably just blow it against Cincinnati and then magically pull off an upset over Oklahoma State, and then people go, woo, Malzahn! And I'm like, really?
That is the Big 12. That is another fear, right? Could you imagine if we beat OU and then we get bounced in the bounce house with a depleted UCF roster? That would be the most Big 12 thing to happen.
The Big 12's been weird. I mean, TCU taking BYU and spanking them, and then like last night, Texas Tech beating TCU. Texas Tech, they've been disappointing all year.
Yeah, they have. It took them a few games to get to the right quarterback. They get to the right quarterback, they win a few in a row, and then he gets hurt.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, I will confess, besides the 2014 Bedlam being one of my favorite moments, I do say no offense in advance, but the 2008 one was one of my favorites because of that Sam Bradford cartwheel. I mean, I got to admit, that's what really got me hooked into this rivalry.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah, it's wild, man. And again, it being the last one and them leaving for the SEC and us being on a 4-game win streak and winning pretty impressively along the way, right? This one's got a little bit of a different kick, right? Because after Bedlam, after K-State, Texas, the Big 12 picture gets pretty clear. And I do think that Iowa State does beat Texas in Ames, Iowa.
I hope they don't for my sake as a Bama man, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, you're in Ames, Iowa, buddy. You're in trouble.
Yep. Ames, Iowa in the cold. I don't care who you are. It levels the playing field. And Iowa State plays an Iowa brand of football, right? They want to fist fight you in a phone booth. They want it to be ugly, dirty, cold, and nasty. And if that plays right into their hands. So yeah, I don't care if you're Bama, Georgia, it doesn't matter. If you go to Ames, Iowa in November, it's not going to be fun. It will not be a fun proposition. Period.
Yeah, they'll go Cujo on you.
They wait for that game. They do. I guarantee you every year Iowa State circles the biggest team coming in November. Because they know it's a game they can win no matter who they're playing.
It's going to be big. So we talked a little bit behind the scenes before the show started as to whether we think the Oklahoma legislator should get involved and try to bring back the Bedlam, make it annual as much as possible. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think he absolutely should. And I'm another one of those on an island type of stances here because there's a decent amount of O State fans that act like Mike Gundy, and they're like, well, good riddance, they left, don't want them, don't don't need them. I think that is absolutely preposterous because
it's bonkers.
It is. And not only is it good for the state, right? I know that our record indicates that we shouldn't want to play them, but I don't give 13 craps about that record because the few and far between times we do beat them, it is instantaneously skyrocketing you up the charts. It enhances your profile. And in this new 12-team format for the playoffs, if you beat OU in the non-con and then you lose to Iowa State in November, the OU win in the non-con, it matters more. So yeah, dude, I think it's I think it's a ridiculous statement that we make sometimes as fans when we say, well, we're happy we're not playing. To me, that makes us look scared, childish, and weak.
It's like the high school ex that's saying, I don't care about him, I don't care about her, but that's all you're talking about is him or her.
Yep.
That's
yeah, I'm not bashful. I'm not bashful in the things that I don't appreciate, and that's one of them. Like even when Gundy talks about it, I'm like, dude, just stop. Like you sound butthurt and salty and too scared to play the daggone game. Like honestly, it's what it sounds like, and it really bothers me. But on the same token, I also hate it when OU fans are like, we're not playing again because Mike Gundy's scared. No, let's be real. We all understand that these contracts are like 6 to 8 years out. Like it just is what it is. Do you think we're gonna You think we're gonna cancel our games with Alabama, Oregon, Nebraska? Do you think we're gonna cancel those to play OU? No, we're definitely not. Now, do I think we should move some of those and remove Tulsa? Yeah, I do. But for the next 8 years, it just is what it is. But after that 8-year mark, I will be severely disappointed if it doesn't come back. And I do think that this, if we're not going to do it, if OU's not going to do it, the Big 12 or SEC aren't going to do it, I do hope and pray that our legislature does step up and make something happen. I really do. Because I don't care if we win 1 out of 8. I mean, I do care. It bothers the hell out of me. But that 1 out of 7 or 1 out of 8 or whatever, that 1 W means that year you're going to have a shot to do stuff. It just is what it is.
For sure. I mean, I would love to see, Oklahoma State have an annual series with Oklahoma and have like another Power 5 game on their schedule. Because, I mean, strength of schedule looks good, right? If you have a tough non-conference schedule, and, say you lose to Oregon and they wind up winning the Big Ten, but you beat Oklahoma, who's competing for the SEC, and they're in the playoffs, and then you win the Big 12, you look fantastic.
Yes, sir. But yeah, most people are just always afraid of the loss, so they'd rather just not play the game. I don't subscribe to that mindset. I hate it. I can't stand it. It physically bothers me when some of our fans are like, well, good riddance, I don't want to play him anymore. I'm like, well, that's exactly how you sound.
Yeah. It's just like that I gave that team everything. It's like, oh my.
Yeah, it's a business, right? I get it. So why are we not making a business decision by helping our team out every year? Because that profile of that game in and of itself, right? It's going to cancel out any loss that you do have more often than not. Because I do think OU's good enough that they will compete. I think they'll be top 4, top 5 in the SEC every year. I do think that every 3 or 4 years, they'll be good enough to play for a title. So yeah, man, anytime you beat OU, it helps your strength of schedule. It helps your RPI. It helps the algorithm. And it does give you a bolstering effect that if you do take a loss, kind of cancel each other out, right? And I think right now is a perfect example. If we dog walk OU, and then we run the table, and we make it to Arlington, and let's say we win the Big 12 title, there's not going to be very many voters that are all that worried about South Alabama as much anymore.
Yeah. I mean, y'all have done a lot.
You know what I mean? If you win your last 7 games in a row and you beat OU and you win a title Yeah, no, people aren't going to be talking about the South Alabama game as in this is the reason why anymore.
Right. I mean, y'all have done great since that loss to South Alabama and Iowa. So I mean,
and Iowa State, man, we should have had that game. Like we legitimately should have had that game. But even I walked away from that feeling like, I mean, okay, we changed the offense and we were productive. Yeah, so if we keep this up, we're going to have a shot. And then, like, thankfully, Iowa State just keeps winning too, and it makes that loss look a little bit better. It's like, oh crap, okay, O State lost to a real football team.
Yeah, I mean, it's got ourselves a big Saturday ahead of us tomorrow afternoon. Definitely looking forward to it.
Me too, man. I cannot wait.
And I mean, one last question I got for
Yes,
you,
sir.
wrap up the show. What
Yes,
do you
sir.
think about being one of the two teams that's playing all four of the newcomers of the Big 12?
Well, before the season started, I was like, this is amazing. We're going to win 9-10 games. Awesome. I love it. But, realistically, I do like it. I do like it. What I don't necessarily love is the future schedules, which got put out 2 days ago. I love that we're going to Boulder, Colorado, year one of them being back in. I think that's a really cool move. And I also love the move to Provo, Utah. But you're not going to have the Farmageddon, K-State, Iowa State every year. I think that is a major downside, right, from the committee. You're not going to be able to establish like O State, Texas Tech every year, or O State, K-State every year.
Texas Tech.
So I do think that we're leaning so much on the Holy War that we're taking away some of the other possibilities for constant rivals. That part I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that BYU Utah is staying, TCU Baylor, Arizona State, Kansas State, and to your point, I hate that they're not having Kansas State, Iowa State for 2027, and that they're not having OK State, Texas Tech, OK State, Baylor. But
yeah, I agree, man. I think that eventually, if we continue to have success, you've got to find us a rival, right? Whether it's probably going to happen pretty organically, I'm sure. But when it does, you got to be prepared. Like let's say that we have a massive slugfest with Colorado, and we get the dub in Boulder, and then the same thing happens next year in Stillwater, and let's say they eke out a 2 overtime victory. You not having Colorado O State the very next year, I think hurts the conference a little bit.
yeah. And like one thing that's weirded me out for this year is that y'all don't have Texas Tech, or Baylor.
Yep. Or TCU.
Exactly. It's just weird. But,
it is.
But that's not what I would have done, but that's just me.
Man, I would tell you, the only boo-boo Brett Yormark has made yet is the future schedule thing. Everything else he's done has been pretty paved in gold.
Well, I mean, like when Texas and Oklahoma were leaving the Big 12, I love that he just added teams quick, fast, and hurry.
Well, yeah, I will give credit where credit's due, and people do tend to forget. That was actually Bob Bowlesby. Bob Bowlesby was He was a terrible commissioner that allowed Texas and OU to bully A&M and Colorado. I mean, he was the second coming after all of that crap went down. And he was never aggressive in his time as commissioner. He was always being reactionary instead of a visionary, which is the exact opposite of Brett Yormark. But the one good thing that Bob Bowlesby did do was he didn't waste any time. As soon as OU and Texas did their stuff, he immediately grabbed 4 of the top 5 best teams available. And then he handed that over to Brett Yormark. So Bob Bowlesby did give Brett Yormark a little something to work with. I will give Bob Bowlesby that credit. But yeah, since then, the things that Brett Yormark's been able to put together, and just the Rucker Park tournaments, and the bringing stuff to Madison Square Garden, the playing games in Mexico, being the only conference title with a Super Bowl party, Yeah, man. He's doing a lot of amazing stuff for the conference. So other than the future schedules, I think that we're in good hands.
Here we go. And as we wrap this show up, and it's gonna be released on X and then on YouTube.
Too
and
easy.
For those who want to keep up with Oklahoma State, this is where they find you on YouTube and on Apple and on Twitter, where they can talk your head off about Oklahoma State. And then there's the Spotify link where they can find your show. It's the number one.
Yeah, we're on every single podcasting platform. I know there's like 70 or 80 or something like that, right? But we're legitimately on every podcasting platform. YouTube, obviously, I do a daily show. This week, I've been showcasing the Bedlam series, so I've had some of the legends that have won a lot of Bedlams in the past appear on this week. Matter of fact, as soon as I get off of here, I'm having Cowboy and Denver Broncos legend Tatum Bell on the show next to talk a little bit more about Bedlam. Yeah. And then on Twitter, @AllDayOState. I like to chop it up. I like to have some fun. I do talk a decent amount of crap whenever it's thrown my way. So, yeah.
There we go.
Again, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I call things a little bit more real than some people would prefer, but that's why I prefer to be, some people's shot of whiskey than everybody's cup of tea. I'm not stupid. I know that if I would have spent my entire show talking about how Mike Gundy's, the greatest thing that's ever walked on water in Stillwater, I do know that my profile would be bigger. But I'm the only one that's willing to say some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes that's affecting us negatively. And I don't mind it, right? I don't love it. But when I got into this job, I always wondered why we never get any real info. Like, why do we never hear any real things? So when I got put in a position that I was able to hear these stories from a multitude of people started coming to me to be a voice. And so I'm going to continue to do that.
Well, as I say, a lie is something that will make you feel good, but the truth is like taking a very bitter pill that you don't want to take, but you have to take because it's good for your body.
100%.
And that is for sure. We make sure we get everybody's take right here on the Jacksonian. And here on YouTube, you can like, comment, subscribe, click notification bells. And on Twitter, you can give me a follow. And I will see you next time, everyone. Take care.